Hi, I'm Louisa Wilcox. Welcome to my podcast, ADHD and Money. I'm a money mentor for ADHD entrepreneurs with over 15 years' experience in the financial world. Having ADHD myself, I know how hard it can be to not only navigate this crazy entrepreneurial world, but also the challenges ADHD entrepreneurs have with managing money too. I know. You're probably thinking I'm terrible with money. I spend far too much. I'm just feeling out of control. I get told these things all the time. I promise you, you're not alone. But it doesn't need to be this way. This is my area of expertise. I've already helped countless ADHD entrepreneurs take control of their money, and I'm going to be spilling the secrets on how you too can do this. So let's get started, shall we? Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I am absolutely delighted to have the wonderful Laura Mears Reynolds with me, and I'm really excited about this because I have been binge listening to Laura's podcast ADHDaf, and if anyone has ADHD who's listening, which the majority of my listeners are ADHD, you need to go and check this podcast out because I found it randomly and I thought, oh, I'll have a listen. And I think I've listened to most of the podcast in about a few weeks. So thank you so much for coming on to mine. I feel a little bit starstruck, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, don't be daft. Thank you so much for having me.
Fine. I really appreciate you coming on. And I absolutely I love how open and honest your podcast is, and that I really need to get you onto mine. So I do have a few questions, if that's okay, but before we start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Laura. Thank you for the introduction and very kind words. I feel like a complete fraud now. That imposter syndrome is real. So I am a late diagnosed ADHD turned activist. I discovered that I had ADHD in my late 30s. I'm now 41. And I started the podcast because I just really want change to happen. And I don't know that I have any power in myself to do that, but I can't live with the injustice that I see in society, how ADHDers are treated in the press, medically, like we're being let down left and right, and it's actually dangerous. So I've just set about using my voice and rallying troops and bringing us all together to raise awareness, break the stigma, and in sharing my experiences, I've found that it has been validating for others, which is really fantastic. But it's also not fantastic because it's not good enough that so many of us are suffering in the ways that we are. And yeah, just started connecting a community. And yeah, it's all a bit surreal. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. And I'm really terrified about what you're going to ask me because money and like finances are absolutely, not just my downfall, it's like my Achilles heel. This is the bit I cannot do. I realize I'm rambling and I will do that. But,
honestly, it's so easygoing, I wouldn't worry. And it's kind of what I loved about what you do is what you're saying is just so important, I think. And in the entrepreneur world especially, more of us are being diagnosed. But I think it's so important, this late diagnosis as well, because I'm 30 and I'm not actually diagnosed yet. I tick every single box on the list. I'm not diagnosed yet because I've waited 2 years for my son to start his journey. And we finally, after literally a 2 year wait, 2 years on the dot, had his first appointment. It's now going to be a minimum of a year before we actually finish the process. So that's 3 years in total. My youngest, I'm pretty convinced has ADHD, and apparently because he's under 6 or 7 you can't have ADHD, so I'm probably looking at another 4 years before we even start and complete his journey. So I'm like, you know what, before I even get to myself, I need to sort my kids out. But it is, and more entrepreneurs are being diagnosed, and just more women in general are being diagnosed, and it's being missed. But even for children now, boys as well, the whole way it's working, the system is broken. We are understanding it more. We've got more knowledge about it, but you can't get diagnosed. And the crazy thing is, even if you go private, it's not recognised by the professionals or the NHS. So you have to go through the NHS route or you can't get the support. And that just absolutely baffles me. The whole thing baffles me.
The whole thing is completely broken. It's a joke. And I'm sorry that you've experienced that. I just want to say, first of all, that self-diagnosis is valid.
Yeah.
So you don't need a diagnosis. You know yourself. You know that you have ADHD. That needs to be respected, particularly in a society where it could take the best part of a decade to get a diagnosis. And although more women are getting diagnosed, it is still a case that most women will not be diagnosed in their lifetime. So self-diagnosis is valid, and it absolutely has to be. It's really fantastic that you are getting support for your children. How old is your son that has to wait another year now?
So he's just turned 10.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Because that's part of it, is that the early intervention can make such a difference. So I'm sorry that he's had to wait 2 years already, but it's fantastic that you're already that far down the path, because that early intervention is still there. And it's fantastic that you armed with the knowledge and know, and have the strength to fight in this system, because it is a fight, and so many of us don't. So it's fantastic that you do have that. So,
and it's crazy, because I've had to, in that 2 years period, I mean, there's been so much more going on because he's got cerebral palsy, but I have had to phone up and chase it multiple times.
Oh, of course.
For parents, it's exhausting.
Absolutely.
Especially when you have your own ADHD. And what's crazy is, again, another thing that baffles me is, oh, you have ADHD, come and pick up this form that you have to fill in. And, I know I need to go and do it. I know I need to get myself on it. I haven't gone and got the form yet.
You literally have to battle the symptoms of the condition for which you need help in order to access the help. You couldn't write it. And especially as we are older and we've built up all of these negative self-beliefs, we're really, really up against it. To actually be able to advocate for yourself and say, actually, all of these things that have gone wrong in my life, or these ways that I keep stumbling, are not my fault. They are a result of this condition for which I need help. And in the back of your mind, you're saying, no, you're completely rubbish and useless. You don't get a pass. This is not something that you have. The whole system is so broken. What the governments have done to the NHS and broken it, got it on its knees, is absolutely criminal. So every which way we're up against it, and it's just so good. The only good in it is the community and the awareness that's being raised, is because together we have to rally together. We have to support each other in the absence of support. And I genuinely believe that together we can make change happen, and it will happen. I bloody well hope it will happen in my lifetime, but it will happen, because it's not going to stay like this. There will come a time when we look back at this like, can you actually believe that this was going on? Like, I know that day will come. It will.
I am seeing, I don't know about you, I am seeing a lot more changes in more spaces for those of us with ADHD. So there's a lot more networking. There's more, like, yourself, you're hosting events for you to actually go to. And there is the support that's coming out, but it's those of us with ADHD who are creating that change and that
100%.
And that's it's fantastic to see, isn't it? Really,
it's fantastic to see. It's so fantastic to see, and thank goodness. But it isn't good enough. No. And the truth is, there is so much more awareness, but unfortunately, the awareness that is being raised is not being met by the same level of acceptance. That is yet to catch up. So unfortunately, especially when you look in the mainstream media, every time you see there's an article in the press about ADHD, I don't know about you, but I brace myself. Okay, what now?
You're waiting for them to say that it's just a phase. It's just a phase. It's going to roll. It's all going to
put down your phone. Put down your phone. Stop jumping on a bandwagon. Stop looking
for
an
and climb a tree.
It's ableism. There is actual ableism, and the truth is, a lot of people are uncomfortable with the language around ADHD. They don't like to be labeled with a disorder or a disability, but the second D in ADHD does stand for disorder, and it is a disability under the Equality Act 2010. And actually, I make noise about that because people need to know about that. There is no way that any other disabled group would be attacked in the press the way that we are.
No.
And that's because people don't know that it's a disability.
Yeah. And because I think we are still raising the awareness around it as well. And it's going to be intriguing, like you say, to see where it goes over the next few years. But there does have to be a shift in people's beliefs. And I see, especially on LinkedIn, so many people going, oh, it is just a phase and things. It's like, no, it's not a phase. It's people understanding themselves. It's like, because medicine is so much better. And now we actually live in such a different world to what we used to even 10, 20 years ago. we don't, you know, these children who were just labeled as naughty, it's like, no, actually they needed a different education, they needed different things to help them thrive. And it's like, now we're giving space for that, and this is why we're seeing more of it, because we are.
Well, the truth is, you know, the average GP only has 1 hour of very basic training on ADHD, and that is based on outdated gender and racially biased research. So the people that are the gatekeepers to diagnosis are not sufficiently trained. They don't actually know about it. And that is the thing about it is that really, I mean, obviously we're talking about children here. And again, I feel like an imposter because that is not my domain. I've very specifically got a lane. And I talk about late diagnosed ADHD. So that's sort of more in a realm that I feel comfortable. But what I do know is that, you know, statistically speaking, sorry to take it here, the statistics are terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, it's 1 in 4, I believe, ADHD women has made an attempt on their life. This is dangerous.
Yeah.
This is dangerous. So it really is very, very bad that any GPs are untrained, that are dismissive, that are pushing people away from help, are misdiagnosing, and then in the press. So it is great that we have each other. It is great that we have raised awareness, but that is why we have to come together in spaces like these and come together as a community and start making noise, because lives literally depend on it.
And I think the thing to remember as well, like going back to your with what you do with women who are diagnosed late, often, you know, we've probably got children by that age.
Yeah.
And ADHD can be hereditary. So when we understand ourselves, we can then help our children. Yeah, we can help our children. So it's that double impact, isn't it? And I mean, because of this, my podcast and what I put out, I've had a lot of people come to me and go, gosh, thank you for what you're doing, because, you know, and a lot of women come to me, I've just been diagnosed, and like, I'm really enjoying listening to it because I have been just been diagnosed. And then suddenly it's that identity crisis of who am I? And even myself, I've looked back and gone, if I maybe understood that when I was younger, would things have been easier? Because I, you know, mine's been very self-conscious, the anxiety, the self-belief. And although over the last few years I've really worked on myself to get through that, and I can push myself through that, but it takes an awful amount of effort. There are days I want to hide in my duvet 100%. And just hide from the world. And there are days where I'm really low and really high. And it's that, and it's understanding yourself and going, okay, this is how my brain works. How can I use that to my advantage? What do I need to do on those days where actually I'm feeling a little bit crap and I do need to hide in my duvet? And giving yourself that space to be able to do that.
100%. How you can best support yourself, knowing like when you can actually identify what the issue is and you can see the ways that you stumble, you have to accept that we're never going to not have this, right? So for all the will in the world, we could very easily stumble again tomorrow. So it's trying to find ways to support yourself in that, accepting that you have got this for life. It's not easy. I just wanted to quickly say as well, and I'm sure we're about to touch on, I'm not very good with numbers. One of my comorbidities is dyscalculia, but I want to say, forgive me if I'm wrong, I believe the statistic is if you have ADHD yourself, then there is a 70 to 80% chance that you have sorry, I can't find the word.
That's okay.
That genetically, so you have inherited that from your family member, and again that you could pass that on to your children. I'm
not sure on the statistics myself, but it's probably about right. I might go and have a Google after our podcast to check, but it is high. And it's difficult because I talk about money but I'm not good at maths myself. And that's something I think is really important for people to realize, is you don't need to be good at maths to understand your money. But the issue we have is in the UK especially, we're not taught financial literacy.
No.
And it's understanding your money and how to manage it rather than the numbers themselves, because we literally do have calculators in our pockets now.
Have that, teachers.
Exactly. So I'm not good with maths, but it's knowing how to handle your money. And the thing to remember with ADHD is we are spontaneous, and that can, especially, it can be very dangerous. And we do get stuck in that dopamine spending cycle, which I've spoken about before on previous podcasts. And when we have that financial literacy and that understanding and how our brain works, it's then going, okay, what can I put into place to actually get on top of my money? What do I need to do to be able to manage it? What habits can I form? What do I need to change? It's the
And
way we
habit
do
forming
money.
isn't easy for
No,
people
it's
like
not.
us.
It takes time.
And
Mindset
then,
is changing.
I think it's really interesting. There's a couple of things that you said there, is that obviously with ADHD, we have so many different comorbidities, and there are so many, sorry, I'm really losing the words today. And you don't have to edit it out. I'm all right with it, because I like raising awareness that this is what ADHD is like. I will forget what I'm talking about many, many times.
So do I, don't
Is
worry.
that is that the different symptoms of ADHD, there are so many, and they can present in so many different ways, that two people with ADHD can have such different presentations. So like you said, we can be spontaneous with money. Yes, 100% yes. But there are a lot of people that also, the most common co-occurring comorbidity or condition is autism. And sometimes, you know, that would be the exact different end of the spectrum, depending. So we can be really spontaneous if we are leaning more heavily towards those symptoms, but other people are very, very structured and are good at having a routine. And then as women, who put two pence in me? As women, we've also got our hormones, our menstrual hormones to deal with. I had Dr. Nigar Arif from BBC, whatever she's on, all sorts of things. She's amazing. She was on the podcast talking about this new research that shows that our symptoms are exacerbated by the sex hormones, basically our menstrual cycle and pregnancy, post-pregnancy hormones. So along with that difficulty to form habits that we have, you've then got like a whole new personality for a couple of weeks in there. So
I think my
really
husband would agree with
it.
that. He
We're
always
really
says
up
to me,
against
he
it.
always says to me, "You're due on soon, aren't you?" I'm like, be careful how
How
you
dare
continue that
you?
sentence. I'm
How
like, be
dare
very
you?
careful how you continue that. And we always laugh. I know he doesn't mean it like that, but and then I
No.
sit back and I go, yeah, no, I can tell myself. And then my watch will flash up like the next day, go, you due on soon? I'm like, ah, there we go.
What do you mean the world isn't actually ending and I haven't just cried about nothing for no reason?
I don't really cry, see, but I get snappy.
Yeah.
I get snappy about the smallest of things, and it's like, and then I look back and go, oh, it doesn't really matter.
It really
Does it?
didn't matter that
Mine's
much.
snappy. I don't cry, but then something on the radio might come on, and then I'll just be in tears, and I'll be like, am I pregnant? Because I'm crying so much at this, and I didn't cry this much when I was pregnant. It's absolutely crazy. I'm gonna have to listen to that episode because that's one I haven't listened to yet.
Yeah,
That's
it's
gonna be so
amazing.
interesting. So I would love to know, if you don't mind answering, what did you feel when you got your diagnosis? Because we've already touched on this and it can be so different for everyone, can't it? Was it relief?
I think there's kind of two things. So when I first discovered that I had ADHD, I just thought it was a joke. I was literally like, you've written down my personality and you're telling me that it's symptoms. Like, are you actually joking? I thought it was really funny. But I didn't understand how my problems and how my emotional problems, the co-occurring conditions, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, etc., how that was all part of the package. I thought it was separate.
Yeah.
And then as the years went on and things got tougher, as my perimenopausal hormones started to come in, is when I basically fell down very, very hard and could not get back up again. And that was when I revisited ADHD. I waited on an NHS waiting list for 3 years, and then I moved to Scotland with my husband's work, and his job gave us access to private healthcare, a massive privilege, something I would never, ever be able to afford. And I looked into it again and realized I could get a diagnosis through Bupa. And that happened within, I think it was about 3 or 4 months. So it happened very quickly after that wait.
Crazy. Yeah,
And as soon as as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was relieved. I was very nervous leading up to it. I felt the imposter syndrome very hard. Like I said, I'm just a rubbish human. I don't get a pass. I've done bad things. I've let everyone down. I can't do anything. I'm useless. You know, there doesn't get to be a reason for this other than that I am terrible, was kind of how I felt at the time. But I woke up the next day after getting diagnosed, and it was the first time I kind of woke up, you know, when you wake up and it's like a dream. And I woke up and I was a bit like, I don't have to hate myself today.
Yeah.
And it was like, just from that point, and the imposter syndrome was still there. You know, it comes back and bites you in the ass. Sorry for swearing. And you go, you know, No, but I must have hammed it up, right? It can't really be that bad. Actually, I probably just exaggerated that. You know, maybe I've conned the psychiatrist who knows what they're talking about into thinking that I have this brain disorder. And then yeah, I literally just bit by bit by bit by bit managed to hate myself a little bit less every day. Managed to think that there was a tiny glimmer of hope that life could be different. And so it was 2 years in January that I got diagnosed, and life looks very, very different now. But I've still got it.
The imposter syndrome is a hard one because it's something we will always battle, isn't
Oh
it?
God,
Always. And I don't think it ever matters, like whatever level you are at within business or life. You know, I have spoken to people turning over multi-seven figures and things, and those who are nowhere near that. And the imposter syndrome is real, whatever level you're at, and that never goes away, never
No.
goes away. But it's something that we do have to, and it's important to work on, and it's that self-acceptance to go, okay, I might not be very good at that, or I've done this in the past, but actually I can look at improving and I can change it and learn. But it is that self-growth, isn't it? And being willing
It's
to do that.
growth. And I think also it's really interesting what you said. I think also an aspect of it is in understanding how you've got to where you are, or the things that trip you up, and there can be that self-forgiveness, that self-acceptance. But with that, to my mind, comes a responsibility, because you can see how this thing can trip you up, and then you can see the ripple effect that that has in every aspect of your life. You know, it's a bit like a wrecking ball swinging in, taking out relationships, jobs, finances. That ADHD tax just keeps swinging in and knocking things out. Now, that is not your fault, but it is your responsibility, because now that you can identify that that could happen, you know, we all have a responsibility to ourselves, but also to the people in our lives to try and make life better, try and for all of us to have the best life that we can have, right?
Yeah, I do agree. And it's hard on a relationship front because I'm quite a blunt black and white person. And I'm quite fiery. I fully admit that. But I'm
You're
also
quite what, sorry?
quite fiery.
Fiery, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
very, very honest. I'm very, very loyal. And when you are a friend of mine or in my life, I'm very loyal and very supportive. But it's also between that fine line of your boundaries, isn't it? Because I think with what I'm like, because I'm an overgiver as well, which can be very dangerous, is I like to please people. And I don't know if you find this, but when someone doesn't necessarily like me or doesn't get on with me, I find that really hard. So I will overgive to try and get them over that. And actually, one thing I've done in the last few years, and I had to do it again this year, is actually go, you know what, you're not serving me anymore, and you're creating me more for my own mental health, because I do have to keep on top of my mental health. Actually, you're not serving me in my life anymore, and I can't do this. And I think it's understanding that whilst, yes, we do need to make sure ourselves we are working those relationships, it's okay to put the boundaries in and go, you know what, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to be treated like that. And you can't
The boundary, the B word, the blessed B word is such a tough one. But yeah, and that is the lesson that I have learned the hard way many times over. And you still have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing it, because I think sometimes a lot of what you said really, really resonates. I think that we have a very similar presentation, and we're very similar in our ways. But like what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot about self-worth in it as well. And I think that sometimes, like you say, when when you have somebody in your life and you care for them and you're loyal and all the rest of it, like you can let things slide. And what I can now recognize potentially as self-sabotage is when somebody is treating me badly or intentionally or unintentionally taking advantage of me. In the past, I can often go, oh, well, they're doing that, but that's got nothing to do with me. It's because they're upset about this or upset about X and Y. And actually, I can take it. I can take it. I'm hard. I forgive them. I don't mind. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. Woo! And then all of a sudden, it bothers me.
Yeah.
And that's why your boundaries have to be in place, and you have to keep upholding them, because I can turn the other cheek at least 100 times more than most people, and a lot more times than anybody should. But in that, I think that is self-sabotage. You are hurting yourself quite often without meaning to, because of that self-worth stuff.
No, I completely agree. Sorry if you could hear the dog barking in the background. I just had someone knock on the door, so I just had to quickly pause the podcast and restart. So, oh, this is just crazy in life, isn't it?
I've just got a cat crawling all over my head, so it's absolutely fine. We're in it together.
Oh, we love our animals, but yeah, they can be a bit loud at times.
But
But
they
no, I
need
think
something
with the
useful to interject to the podcast. So rude, just
oh,
coming in,
I know, bless
not
them.
entering the discussion.
At least cats can't bark as loud as dogs. Oh, so we've just discussed the boundary side. And it is, for anyone listening, it's so important and it's okay to put those boundaries in place. I think that's one thing I would like to add on to that, because it took me a long time to realize that it was okay to have those boundaries because of the people pleaser element. So if you do feel that there are things or people that aren't serving you well, do go and go, okay, is this me? Am I reacting to it a certain way? Or actually, do I need to go, actually, this isn't quite right? And it's okay to do that if you feel the need to.
It's also not easy to do.
No. Oh gosh. No. It took me 10 years, 10 years,
Yeah.
near enough to actually say in the end, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
I can't dive into it too much, but 10 years. And it does, it's really hard. And it's not easy, but sometimes
No.
when you have to do that, it can be really freeing as well. But it takes time to get to that point, definitely.
Yeah.
I have been asked by a friend of mine to ask this question. What's your favorite cake? She will be so happy I've asked this.
Oh, that's such a good question. Does your friend make cakes?
She doesn't, but she is a bit cake obsessed. She
Cake
absolutely
obsessed.
loves them. Yeah.
That is such a good question, you know. I do love a carrot cake. I love a coffee and walnut cake,
I
but I
love a
have
carrot
to
cake.
tell you about this cake in Leeds. When I did the Leeds show last year, it was 1 year of ADHDaf, and we had a ginormous birthday cake made. And one layer was like Victoria sponge. The next bit, it's like a wedding cake. The bottom bit was like chocolate mud cake, but the whole thing was ice because there's a whole leopard print thing going on. We can come back to that. But the whole thing was iced, and she hand painted leopard print in gold on this cake. And she was like, the best way to do that is if instead of icing, I'll use a white chocolate ganache. So this cake was literally covered that thick with white chocolate ganache all the way
Oh
around.
my
It was the most
gosh.
delicious thing in the world ever.
I'm gonna have to go and get some cake now. It sounds amazing. I'm glad I've got some chocolate actually, because that might have to settle the craving, but that sounds so good. See, I love carrot cake. But I touched on earlier that I have to be careful of my mental health, and it's because how old am I? About 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 years ago, I developed a nut allergy after having my second son, and I can't eat
No.
carrot cake anymore because they
What?
have nuts on them. It's crazy. I do
You've
miss it. Absolutely.
developed a nut allergy.
Yeah, I woke up. So I've eaten them my whole life, and it was about a few hours after eating an M&M, I went into anaphylaxis. I woke up
Oh
with it,
my God.
and it's been a long journey. But basically, it's really complicated. But it's relating to pollen. But I've been on a waiting list to get more information about it for like 3 years now,
Oh my
or 4 years,
gosh.
and I've been on a waiting list for that long. I had a letter to tell me that I was on a waiting list, and to confirm if I still wanted to be on the waiting list, I went onto another waiting list. It's crazy. But yeah, so I can't eat carrot cake anymore, so now I
Oh,
make it
sad
myself. But
times.
I do miss the little nut element in it.
I
That was a really random bit, sorry.
know. I'm now really scared that I'm going to wake up with a nut allergy.
Oh, it's unlikely, so I wouldn't worry. I mean, I don't know the facts. It can
Yeah.
happen. Mine was after having my second son. It's to do with
Yeah.
hormones, so there you
Oh
go.
gosh.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
sacrifices we make. Carrot cake. Does that boy
I did
even
wonder if I had
know?
a third, if it would, I'd reverse it, but I wasn't really willing to try that. If I'm honest with you, I was quite happy with two. I would love to know, and if you don't want to answer, that's absolutely fine. But what do you struggle with around money? Because I think so many of us with ADHD do struggle with the money things. And I've already touched on a bit about the being spontaneous. I have been very open about my Amazon addiction because it's quick, easy click. And so I've got barriers in place now where if I want something, I put it in my basket for 48 to 72 hours before I allow myself to buy it.
That's
Because
good.
otherwise I will just spend. And it's
Yeah.
so quick and easy to do it.
And
So
it feels like it's not real money, right?
no, I know that's the
Yeah.
problem. That's one of the problems, which is where we're going into more of a cashless society. this is why it's so important that we do learn to manage the money side. So is it more because of the numbers that puts you off doing it, or is it just money in general?
I think it's very, very complex. I think that with all of these things is the nature nurture thing, right? So the non-ADHD side, though I must admit it probably was somebody else's ADHD, meant that my life was really like that. So my dad had a good job,
Yeah.
but he often lost his job or walked out of jobs. So we were really either had lots of money, had no money, and it just went like that my entire life. So money as a whole and employment as a whole is just caused me so much anxiety as a child. So there's that, right? So first
Yeah.
of all, there's this kind of like this touchy thing that I don't want to get near because it's really scary and it's caused me so much stress. We've lost our home, all sorts of things have happened in my childhood, this instability. But then what happened was banking. So there's good news in this, right? So growing up, we didn't have internet banking. Okay. And there's this whole thing. I'm getting old school now, right? There's this whole thing where you put your money in the machine, it tells you what your balance is, whatever, right? But you
Yep.
can also ring up. Now, I have unknowingly have dyscalculia. So I'm not very good with numbers. Now, I'll give you a really good example. I obvious things like it say £1,500 or £15,000 or
Yeah.
£150,000. I'm gonna have to take some time and count some zeros to get back to you on that, right?
Yeah.
So there's that side of it, but there's also I struggle to quantify the value of things. So I don't really know how much a car is. I don't know if it costs £200, £2,000, £20,000. I don't know. I don't seem to be able to retain that information.
Yeah.
So that's complicated. But really, the one that really tripped me up was because I have this nervousness from past trauma with money and also from the numbers darting around the screen and not being able to quantify them. I found it easier to phone the bank and listen to the lady who says the balance of your account is da 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 da, and she is a liar. Because they basically, there's something to do with, and I still can't remember, there was something to do with your available balance and
Oh,
your
yes.
something else made up a tree in space underwater balance,
You're
right?
available when your current balance, two
Whatever.
different balances. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all lies. It's all lies. It means nothing. Anyway, so that tripped me up time and time again. On the Too Much tour, the first tour that I did, I told the most harrowing story. Now, my stories always get a laugh, but I tell you what, they were not funny at the time. But my really, really harrowing story was that I ended up on the streets of Bangkok without a penny to my name. And what happened was, before the days of internet banking, well, maybe there was internet banking, but I just didn't have it. Basically, I was trying to keep track of how much money I had spent, but obviously not knowing that I had ADHD, I was forgetting things.
Yeah.
So I'm already starting with the wrong balance because I've rung up the lying lady and I've got the wrong number in my head. I've spontaneously bought things that I don't remember, and all these little things, a little coffee, a little magazine here, whatever, it all adds up. Bus fare, all these things that you forget add up. So this is all totting up. I get to Bangkok on my own. I love that city, but it's also quite intense, right? And I go to the hotel, I check in, luckily managed to check into this hotel, and I go to buy a bottle of water, which you need in the heat. And I go to buy a bottle of water at the bar of the hotel and my card declines. So I go, oh God, I've done that thing. I've forgotten to tell the bank that I'm abroad. So they're not letting the transaction go through. I go downstairs to the dreaded ATM that I never look at. I put my card in the machine, zero funds. And there I am in Bangkok on a different time zone without a penny to my name. And it was genuinely one of the most frightening experiences of my life, not just because I'm a woman on my own on the streets of Bangkok, but because all I could think to myself was, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I must be insane. I must be crazy, right? It's terrifying. So that how on earth have I got here? So I had to call my mum, be bailed out one more time. And the sad thing about that is how it looks from the other side. Is that looks like, oh, Laura's on holiday having a lovely old time. She spent too much money. Laura wants to go to another lovely island. Laura wants to stay in a nicer hotel. Laura wants a massage. That's what that looks like, because I didn't dare tell her what had really happened, because I was ashamed and frightened. And I didn't want to put that fear into my mother. And the saddest part of the whole story was I was 30.
You know what, it's funny. It's not funny at all.
It is funny in
And I'm sorry you
hindsight.
went through that, but it's actually so many people, not to that exact story, obviously, but have the same feelings around
Yeah.
money. And it's interesting what you're saying, because I mean, my first job was in the bank. I've, my whole work background is finance. So to me, I understand the current and the available balance. For me, it's second nature. This is probably why I'm quite good with money in some ways, or actually understanding it. And because I was a single mum very young, I was always had to be very, very careful, because otherwise I literally couldn't keep a roof over my son's head. So for me, money has been something that I've always had to be very, very conscious about, to the penny. Otherwise I couldn't eat. And there were times when I couldn't eat because I just didn't have the money. And that wasn't through lack of working. I worked full time. And actually, nursery bills, oh my word, but so many people fear and get overwhelmed with the money. And it is interesting what you said there about the lying lady, because that's one thing I never considered, is about understanding the current and available. Yeah, I have explained that terms to so many people without even realizing, and it is very dangerous. It is so dangerous, because there can be, it's like if you go to the bank, for example, anyone listening who doesn't quite understand, so if your bank shows you that you've got an available balance of £1,000, and you go and you put a check in for £2,000, your current balance would show your balance as being £3,000. But actually, because the check hasn't gone through, hasn't cleared, you only have £1,000 to spend. And the reason it can be dangerous is because the check could bounce.
The
It
check
might
could
not clear.
bounce, and you can,
Bills could come out.
Yeah.
And
And
this
you can
is
spend
where
money that you don't have.
yeah, exactly. And it
Yeah.
goes back as well. Nowadays, the danger we have is because we're in a digital thing, and me going back to the Amazon, one click buy. It's so fast, and it goes like, even the loading screen goes so quick. I like I do say to a lot of people who have a lot of debt, to, if they can, spend with cash, because you see it physically going. It's been
100%.
very physical. And those who, a lot of clients I speak to, I do say, it's a tedious task, but actually, if you can, for 30 days, write every single spend down. I don't mean every single spend. As soon as you spent it, actually write it down, because we've become a lot more conscious of it. And then that's when we can start going, right, okay, these are how I'm spending. This is what I'm doing. And it's not to bring shame or anything about your situation, but it's to make
Just
it
awareness.
conscious, to make it
And
aware.
the thing is, life has completely changed since Monzo.
Yes.
Literally, I can see it, and there it is. It's right there in front of me, and this is where that's gone, and that's where that's gone. And to put money in pots. And the great thing about that is, the one time that being forgetful is helpful is that I forget that the pot exists, and then I'm like, oh, I've got some money in a pot, magic money I didn't know I had. But I really, really relate to what you're saying now, with having to be so careful. Like, obviously, I didn't have mouths to feed apart from my own, but there are many times that I couldn't feed myself. Yeah. And so one of the ways that I got around that, which I didn't even realize, coping strategies, this is how so many of us have got through life without realizing that we have ADHD. One of the reasons I always ended up working in pubs is you get fed.
Oh, I never considered that. That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. I never even thought about that. Yeah, to get a job where you get fed. Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being so open. I've absolutely loved the conversations we've had today. For any listeners, where can they come and find you? Where do you hang out most? Where's the best place to listen to you?
Well, so ADHDaf podcast is available on all platforms. So wherever you are, you can listen to that. It's been a kind of whole safari of the last, well, coming up for 2 years. And now, with there being such a story behind it, I'm kind of doing different episodes as well, because it's such a lot to get through.
Yeah.
It's nearly 100 episodes. So I've started to do these little tidbits, which are mini micro interviews, which are 10 minutes long-ish. And people can get some information quickly without having to listen to my whole bloody life story before they get there. So that's available on all platforms. I also do live events where I'm raising awareness in different cities around the UK. So that is not just to raise awareness, but to also bring people together. I really believe that peer support is invaluable in receiving a diagnosis later in life, and that includes self-diagnosis, which is obviously valid. So we come together, we learn some stuff, we have a giggle, and the way that I've been able to do that in my own weird and wonderful way is to look at how I feel comfortable in the realms that I can do that. So I've worked at festivals and at events. And so I've put on a kind of Ibiza festival-y style event because that's what I know how to do, which sounds a bit weird. So people are like, well, is it a seminar? What are we doing here? And it's basically, I'm practicing what I preach in putting systems in place to support myself to be able to do the job that I want to do. So I couldn't just go into any place and give a seminar, give a lecture, tell a load of facts, but I can put a party on, and I can play bingo, and I can do karaoke, and I managed to do the same thing. And yeah, just bring people together. Local Connections is also a place where you can bring the people in your life that perhaps don't understand ADHD, that you might need backing up in what your experience is. I can do that for you in a weird and wonderful way. So yeah, the third UK tour is Alien Nation, which starts at the end of next month in 14 UK cities. And I'm basically exploring why ADHDers feel alienated in society, and my own experience of feeling like an alien and finding an alien nation, because there's actually loads of us. So we're all aliens together. And if you can't make it to a live event, there is also a Patreon community, patreon.com/ADHD as females, which is a peer support community where we do all sorts of things like morning body doubling, blogs, vlogs, live blethers, all sorts, meetups. It's a great place. So yeah, come and connect.
Thank you. And I am coming to one of your events. I was very excited to see you doing one in the Southwest. Like, you have no idea how excited I was, because I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to go up to London or Manchester or Birmingham. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm getting a ticket. I'm going to it. So I'm very, very excited.
Yay! I can't
wait to
wait.
come and see what it's all about. So yeah, it's amazing. And I think there's going to be a lot to learn. So thank you for putting it out there. I do think it's so important that we do create these spaces, these safe spaces for us to go and learn and meet like-minded individuals. So it's going to be really exciting.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't wait to meet you there. All genders welcome. Leopard print encouraged. It is the leopard print army.
I've never worn leopard print. Okay, I'm going to have to go shopping.
Or alien ravewear, whatever you like, whatever you like. No,
there's something else I also don't own. I have to get some neon leopard stuff. I know, I probably sound a bit boring now, don't I?
Not at all, not at all. Come as you are, all are welcome, and I can't wait to see you there.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you.